Thanks, Adrian. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for budget compliance and procurement for Sage users. So just a little intro before I let Foy take over. Having good processes around procurement allows you to manage spend before it happens. And budget compliance is one of the key components of making informed procurement decisions, but it's often overlooked in companies' procurement processes. So in the approval process, approvers might have all the information they need on a requisition about who's buying what from whom or how much or how many, but if they don't have visibility into what impact that purchase will have on any relevant budgets, then they just can't make an informed decision. So they either find themselves needing to hold up the process so they can check budget numbers, or they risk approving a purchase that would put them over budget. So today, Foy's going to talk about how technology can help by providing budget visibility throughout the requisition and procurement process, and also allow you to define automated processes for handling potential budget overages. Foy, if you can advance the slides of the agenda. So Foy's going to give you just a brief background on Paramount Workplace, and then he'll demonstrate and talk about how Paramount Workplace's Sage integrated requisition and procurement software lets you stop budget overages before they happen. Foy?
All right, Darcy, thank you very much. So as Darcy mentioned, my name is Foy Maynor. I'm the VP of Sales with Paramount, and I'm going to be walking you through a few PowerPoint slides today and talking a little bit about budget compliance and procurement, as well as managing spend before it starts. So we may talk about a few areas that you wouldn't consider to necessarily be budgeting components of an e-procurement solution, but I'll touch on those and give a little bit more detailed explanation. I will let everybody know today that I am just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and we've had several series of storms roll through, so I'm a little bit power challenged today. So I've had to move my office location to a little bit of a different environment. But the next round of storms isn't scheduled to come through for a little while, so hopefully we'll get through this without any issues. But if you do hear any unusual noises or anything along those lines, then certainly bear with me there. But we'll be able to get through the presentation. As I switch to the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit about Paramount Workplace before we actually jump into the topic today. We were founded in 1995, so for more than 23 years, we've always done spend management solutions. And to us, spend management is requisition and procurement, which we'll focus on today, expense, AP automation, as well as project timesheets. So we've always done requisition and purchasing or procurement solutions throughout those years. And then as a natural extension of the managing spend process, we've added some of those other components as we've gone along. So there's a lot of similarities between those areas. Ultimately, you are spending money or wanting to get money reimbursed back to you. And the spend management solutions that we offer put the controls in place that are necessary in order to make sure you're not spending anything that hasn't been approved. But again, overall, it's also about ease of use and ease of entry. We're headquartered out of metropolitan Detroit. Again, as I mentioned, I'm just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and we have other offices spread around North America in both the U.S. and Canada. Our support, as well as our development and some administration, is primarily located in the metropolitan Detroit office. And then again, we have other offices spread out with both sales and consulting in those particular areas. And what we provide is mobile and web-based cloud solutions in order to be able to manage your spend. Now, worldwide, we've got more than 131,000 users. Our product can be run standalone. So in other words, we don't need to be integrated to any back office financial or ERP solutions. But in this particular instance, we're talking about our product as it relates to Sage. So we do offer out of the box, so meaning there is no additional integrations or cost for the integration needed for the different Sage products, real-time seamless integration. And our product can be deployed software as a service, meaning that we, Paramount, can host the application cloud-based. We can also work with third-party organizations to have the product be hosted, as well as we can reside on-premise. So we do offer the flexibility of the different integrations that we have with the solution, but then also how can you deploy the solution based upon your needs and your requirements. So for more details on that, we'll provide some contact information at the very end, and you're certainly welcome to reach out to us to understand maybe some of the differences that are there. But again, please do understand that it's very flexible from our side as far as how we are deployed. Overall, spend management solutions should be easy for employees so that it is easy to adopt. If you make it difficult for employees to enter their transactions or approve the transactions, then they're simply going to ignore the process. They're not going to want to be a part of the process. So our big focus from our side is how easy is it to get the information in, and then ultimately providing visibility to the different details so that users have all the information at their fingertips, while at the same time making it effective for management so that they can have the proper approval processes in place to handle any exceptions that may occur. And then also powerful for accounting, because you're going to be able to link the different departments, procurement, accounts payable, so that they have, again, all of the visibility and details that they need in order to understand what occurred during the process. The process is seamless, the process is efficient, because you don't have to go back and forth with phone calls as well as emails in order to get the details that you need in order to do your individual jobs. Now, this is a horizontal application, meaning that we are applicable to any organization that needs to be able to manage their spend across those different areas. But as an organization, we've certainly seen some strength with several different industries. We are deployed worldwide, so we do work with organizations outside of the U.S., Canada, North America region. So anybody that needs to be able to use the product can do so there. And then we also offer multi-currency as well as multi-language options in order to facilitate the use for organizations that are outside of the U.S. or any organizations that may have subsidiaries out there as well. And sorry, bear with me just one slide. There we go. All right. So the different industries that I spoke about before that we've seen more success in are shown here on the screen. Again, just if you're not in one of these industries, it doesn't mean you can't use the application, but these are where we've seen success. And some of these areas, as you look at them, not-for-profit, government, utilities, those make logical sense to why budgeting would be important. When you need to be able to justify your spending based upon grants that you're getting, or justify spending based upon the budgets that you're within, those make perfect sense for the overall procurement process. So certainly with nonprofit organizations, where you need to be able to do that, government, municipalities, we're a very good fit there. But then also you see other areas where we are a good fit because of the inherent nature of the functionality and the solutions that we offer. And then this next slide will give you an idea of some of the customers that may be more recognizable that do use our solution. And as you see, these customers cover many of the different areas of those different industries that we just took a look at. All right, so again, we offer seamless out-of-the-box integration to many different ERPs. Specifically, we are a Sage Development Gold partner, and we are integrated to Sage 100, 300, 500, as well as Sage Intacct. We do offer the multi-currency and multi-language for organizations that need that as a part of their operations. We do annual releases, so we typically do one major release per year based upon our users' feedback, wish list that they may provide, but also research analyzing that we do in order to understand what is important and what may be within the future of a procurement solution as well. It is a 100% web-based solution, meaning you access that via your web browser. You can also access it via your mobile device. We support Safari, Firefox, as well as Internet Explorer in regards to the browsers. And then we also work with Android as well as Apple devices to be able to do the transactions as well, giving visibility anytime, anywhere, very easily for the user. And that's pretty much any user that's a part of the process, from the people that are entering the transactions to the people that are approving the transactions. And because of the access that is provided, there's multiple authentication modes so that you're able to make sure that it is a secure connection. Users are only going to be able to see and do what you allow them to do from their setup within security. On the requisition and procurement side, there's many different pieces other than the budget enforcement that can be a part of the overall spend management process. We'll touch on a couple of them here just briefly, but just so you know, the overall requisition and procurement process is designed to be easy for the user and provide visibility across the organization. So we use things like catalogs to be able to make the entry easy for the user and be able to shop in a familiar format. But then behind the scenes, we do things with the approval workflow, the dynamic rules engines, to make sure that everything is being approved. You can use questionnaires to answer additional information and additional details about the transactions as they go through. And then certainly because you are integrated or connected to the ERP system, you've got GL distributions, powerful tax capabilities that are all a part of the product as well. And many of those things also apply to the expense. Expense takes on a little bit different flavor as we look at it, because you certainly have OCR capabilities in regards to the receipts, as well as some credit card import functionality, direct connection to banks, and then some other details that you can use there. So again, keep in mind as we look at some of the pieces that we're going to talk about today, there are many other components to both the requisition, procurement, as well as expense sides that we can talk about in more detail as we go along. So we find that many organizations are still in the manual procurement process, and the manual procurement process is paper-based, email-based, or even Excel-based, meaning that you have a bit of a process in place. You've got some information that may or may not need to be filled out on a piece of paper or sent to somebody via email, but it's not automated. You're not using a solution that can combine all of those different areas. So obviously, if you're using paper, there's the opportunity for transactions to get lost. If you're using paper, then you certainly don't have very much of a capability to compare transactions to budgets. When you have paper or email or Excel-based, then the approval processes are a bit disjointed because you got to depend on somebody to be in the office in order to be able to approve those transactions and keep them moving. And then once you get to the accounting side of things, you've got to hand key or rekey and re-enter the information in order for that to go into your ERP system. And then obviously that can be and can result in errors for the entry there. So it ends up being a lengthy, inefficient process from the start of the request for goods or services all the way to the end. And there's many organizations that still fall within this manual procurement area, but then they also fall, maybe somewhere in between as well. They're using a little bit of an automated process, and even small improvements in the automation can increase the return on investment here by implementing those kind of solutions. And when you implement an automated procurement solution, then you are able to take advantage of many of those other components that we mentioned briefly as we were going along. Catalogs that you can shop in a familiar format that users are familiar with in their day-to-day lives. So it makes it easy for them to enter the transactions. Mobile access, so you're able to enter the transaction via the mobile device. Approval processes where there's email notifications, email approvals, mobile approvals, and then with the integration to the back office financial and ERP systems, then you're going to be able to have the information flow seamlessly over. You're going to validate the information as it's being entered, so you're not going to run into the errors of rekeying or re-entering that information. And then certainly now with an automated solution, you're going to be able to enforce policies, approval policies, as well as budget controls throughout that process, and have visibility to all that happens with that process, whether it be the transaction, audit trails of the transaction, attachments against the transaction, so that all the departments know what's going on with those particular areas. So our ultimate goal is to automate the entire procurement process, and a part of that automation of the process can certainly be a budgeting component. Now, obviously, when you hear the word budgeting, one of the things that you normally think about is comparison to a general ledger budget. And that is a very key and a very important part of what we do and what we've done for many different years. So if you are using general ledger budgets, then you have the capability from the point that the requisition is entered to compare the transaction to that budget, get a warning if you're over budget, route for approval if you're over budget, but then also be able to see budget details, what's pre-encumbered or encumbered, what are the actuals, your total budgeted, and then what's the remaining budget. You can budget by period, you can budget by month. You've got a lot of flexibility on how and where those budgets are managed and maintained and what you're comparing against. So from the point of entry, you can control that process and make sure that when somebody's making a request that they are within budget. And if they're not within the budget, then you can have approvals be triggered because of that, with very clear warnings and very clear indications on the screen. So the approvers are going to see this as well. The approvers are going to know that you're over budget. They're going to then be able to make a decision about, do they allow this transaction? Do they add more money to the budget, or do they simply disapprove the transaction because of the impact that it's having on the budget? And then also, once you get to the receiving, the invoice matching, and ultimately over into the accounts payable process, you've still got full visibility to the impact that it's going to have or has had on the budget, and it'll take into account all of those different pieces. So this is very key across the different products that we integrate with. And again, it is the GL budget integration that we offer, and what most people typically think about when they think about budgeting within the procurement process. But budgeting can also extend beyond just the general ledger budget. There's vendor contract management that can be associated as a part of the overall procurement process as well. What this allows you to do is to enforce pricing and track spending with vendors based upon what you've been able to negotiate with them. So not only can you budget by vendor, you can make sure you're getting the best price anytime a user requisitions a particular item. You can make sure you're getting it from the best vendor, and you can track that transaction. So maybe you get a rebate or a discount after you hit a certain dollar amount. You're going to know where you are within that process. This is going to also help you better your relationships with your vendors, with your suppliers, because now you're going to be able to understand who's buying what from whom, and it's going to give you power to negotiate with those vendors and suppliers in order to get better deals, better delivery times, whatever the case may be. So as you think about budgeting or managing the spend before it starts, also think about contract management, because if you have items that are under contract or services that are under contract, from the time that they are requisitioned, you're going to get them at the negotiated price from the negotiated vendor, and that's going to help you further with your approval processes as well. One of the key parts of this overall budgeting process is you don't want to bog transactions down in unnecessary approvals. So if a transaction is within budget or under contract, then you could potentially eliminate levels of approval and move the products through the system faster. There's also a component of being able to create contracts from within the application so that you can enter a contract, route that for approval before it's created. But this takes budgeting to a different level or through a different process, but still allows you to be able to track the spending just in a little bit of a different manner. There's also project and job cost budgeting functionality available as well. So this is actually going to be able to look at the projects and or job cost information within the back office financial or ERP system. Now, there may be some differences depending on whether it's 100, 300, 500, or Intacct. So certainly please check with us as we have those conversations regarding project or job cost budgets. But the benefit here is now you're able to, at the line level, enter project or job information, see where you are within that budget at that period of time, and then again, track the budgets throughout the process against that project or job. And by the way, we also have our own project solution. It tends to be a capital project usage, and it allows you to set up a project, a phase, and a task, set up budgets at those different levels, and then compare the transactions to the budgets. And in many cases, you can actually use the project and job cost budgets at the same time that you're using the general ledger budgets and get the exposure to both of those. And then, of course, there's some reporting capabilities that you have to be able to see in detail where you are against that budget. So again, this is another component of what we talk about when we say we're going to do budget tracking or budget control, but then also managing the spend before it starts, and you can take it down to the project and or job level. Now, the next slide that I popped up talks about catalogs, and the question might be, well, how do catalogs apply to budgets? Well, catalogs are actually a key part of the overall process, and it's a part of the managing spend before it starts. One of the biggest issues with organizations that are using manual processes or have automated processes that have not been adopted or ignored by the user is maverick spending. And maverick spending is essentially asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission, because they ignore the process or go outside of the process that you have for your procurement. Then they are simply asking to be reimbursed for what they bought. So they might not be paying the best price. They might be getting it from the best vendor. So catalogs are a key part of that. When you implement guided buying catalogs, internal catalogs that can be set up by vendor, by location, by type of item, you're giving the users access to only the items that you're going to allow them to purchase, but you're giving them access very simply, very easily, in a familiar format. It's an Amazon type shopping experience. You're going to see pictures and descriptions and pricing of items. You're going to be able to build a shopping cart, check out of that cart, immediately create a requisition, and then have it route for approval. So when it's easy for the user to use, they're more likely to use it. And from a company standpoint, because they're only buying what you're allowing them to buy, what you know they're going to buy, then you're going to save money on those purchases, get the items from your best vendors, know who's buying what, from whom, and when, and have additional or more control. So this is a big part of managing spend before it starts. That's not necessarily something you would normally consider as a part of the budget, but it's a key, very important part. And then again, by enabling those catalogs to be available via your mobile device, you're allowing access anywhere, anytime to those catalogs. Shop the catalog on your tablet or your phone, generate a requisition, submit it, and route for approval, and then also be able to do the approvals from that mobile device as well. And as I mentioned earlier when I talked about vendor contracts, by using catalogs, which help control the purchases from the start, you're also potentially eliminating levels of approval. Again, an important and key part of what we're trying to do here as a part of the process, so that users won't ignore the process. They'll be able to use the automation that you're putting in place, and then obviously allow you to be able to see the benefit for that. So certainly catalogs can be a part of the overall spend management and budgeting process as well, because you're able to control that spending. And then overall, throughout this entire process, it's visibility. It's visibility to the budget. Where are you within that budget? How much have you spent across all the transactions? How much is pre-encumbered that's still within the process as you look at these, and then be able to approve or disapprove with that information. So you're getting the visibility for all of the different people that are using the application, that are a part of the process, to be able to see that. And those budget details that we talked about are available at each step of the way, so you're always going to know where that is. More visibility into your cost, and then ultimately allowing you to lower your procurement processing costs and establish those controls without negatively impacting the user necessarily, because they're going to be able to have that information. So now, from a visibility standpoint, if you want to know where your requisition is in the process, or has the check been cut, you're able to see that without having to call somebody, email somebody, or walk down to someone's office in order to be able to get that information. All right, so I'm going to move to our last slide here, and in just a minute, I'll let Adrian let me know if there's any questions. I was planning on doing a presentation and demo a few of the pieces that we talked about this afternoon, but again, with the power challenges that I've been facing today, I was not able to do that. So certainly, if you want more details on anything that we looked at or talked about today, contact us. We can do a demonstration and show you the application, as well as answer any questions we don't get answered today, and then give you more information and more details about the process. But I do appreciate everybody's time today for this, as well as your patience with a little bit of the challenge.